One of the things that I referred to this, and you referred to this as well, about fake news having very real consequences, especially in the context of India. We've seen people getting lynched. We've seen that whole stuff about the vaccines, people simply refusing to give vaccines to their kids because of some message that they've seen on WhatsApp. There is again this ongoing debate between where is the role of law enforcement and where is the role of people from spreading that fake news? Because again, law enforcement seems to be coming to the scene of crime much after the crime has already taken place.
But I think that's right in like how quickly can legislative and regulatory frameworks catch up with what is a very rapidly evolving kind of publishing climate. I think there are measures which, I don't know what the precise legislation is here, but there are things like hate speech which cover, overly, excessively inflammatory, speech, whether on social media or on news publications that are set out deliberately to inflame racial or intercommunal tensions. And so there are kind of corners of existing legislation that cover things, but exactly the anti-vaxxing thing is a really good example. It's like, that is clearly detrimental to public health. But is there a legislative solution? Probably not. It's probably much more a whole society solution about how you make sure that positive messages around vaccination are also being shared on social platforms.
I think the world really sort of sat up and took note of the fake news problem in as much as it can really influence the behavior of people, voter behavior, when the whole Cambridge Analytica crisis sort of blew up in everybody's face. What are the real consequences of fake news and how it affects the democratic process? I know Cambridge Analytica was one aberration, let's use that phrase, but there are very real possibilities that voter behavior can be influenced through fake news.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, there are good newsworthy examples in the US around Russian activity around the US presidential election. There's a disputed story around what the impact of Cambridge Analytica was in the UK's Brexit referendum. But actually, I'm most worried about rather more sort of toxic and inflammatory issues around. So you look at, for example, Reuters published a really interesting report recently about Myanmar and about hate speech in Myanmar, where, as we said in the earlier talk, that there are very serious real-world consequences to the kind of Wild West nature of some of what's been posted on social platforms. And actually, in Western countries, there is concern, rightly, about the impact on democratic processes. But I think we always have to weigh that in the balance against like potentially much more serious real-world consequences in other markets.
Does it worry you that good old-fashioned politics has now moved to the Twitterverse and to Facebook, and that's where the political narrative is getting set? And this is across the world. I mean, this is in the US. I'm sure that's the case in the UK too.